is Talk with John on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We are grateful. I am grateful I'm here with you today. We're getting off to a little bit of a late start because of your host. I had some work meetings that I had to be doing. Unfortunately, I have to pay the bills sometimes. I'm not independently wealthy yet. But when that does occur, then I can just be like full time Main Street Media, Utah. But until then, I do have to earn a living. So let me get this show off to a proper start. Today is it is June 4th, 2024. It's roughly 4:21 p.m. in Utah and 6:21 p.m. back in the great state of South Carolina, where my guest will be joining me from. But first, I want to give out my show prayer and my show mantra. Now, folks, as I've said this before, I'm not. I'm a hypocrite. I admit it. I don't live up to this perfectly, but it's the prayer of my heart when it comes to doing the show. So let's start with my show prayer. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra: where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. That's taken from a number of places throughout Scripture and also from Article 7. So looking forward to being with you for the remainder of the next 2 hours, as I said. Now, let me introduce my guest joining me now. Michael Letz. Michael Letz is the founder, CEO, and president of Invest USA. He is Invest USA is a nonprofit organization that has helped give thousands of bulletproof vests over there to police forces and law enforcement through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. He has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt, hence his pro-police stance for his brothers and sisters in blue. You can learn more about his organization at investusa.org. That's INVEST USA.org. Michael, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today, for being here. And let's just thank you once again. We love having you.
Always a privilege. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, John.
Well, it's our pleasure, and we're glad to have you. So, what is your initial thoughts on the federal gun case against Hunter Biden?
Well, it's a paradox in terms of what's just and what's fair and what's not. And let me tell you exactly why. You have to understand, they have to set the stage. Let's talk about just a minute to compare the two between Trump and Biden. Okay, on Trump's issue, we have to pick a location to where 97% voted for Biden. We know they can't stand Trump. Hunter's, we have to pick a location to where 97% voted in favor of Biden. He's in Delaware. He is at the location that his father has served as the senator or the vice president for over 50 years. You need to understand something about how the political process works. This is a federal case, which means it's in a federal courthouse, which means it's being heard by a federal judge. All federal judges are appointed by the President of the United States upon the recommendation of the senior senator from the state whereupon they are recommended. That senior senator for Delaware is Joe Biden. So all the judges on the federal bench in Delaware have all been good friends of Biden. That's why he recommended that he be appointed. So you see what we have here now. We have a judge who is a close friend of the Bidens. You have a jury that support Biden, 97% voted in favor of Biden. Versus Trump, you have a judge whose daughter is making millions of dollars working for the Bidens, okay? And working for the Democratic Senate and the Democratic Congress people on her campaign list. They have a jury.
And what you're speaking of is I believe it's Judge Merchan, the
Merchan,
one
that's
that he
correct.
was just found guilty with. Now, folks, he's not just saying that hyperbole. That's been reported multiple places throughout the media. In fact, I want to double down just a little bit on that statement, Michael. She's just not making money. My understanding is, according to reports in the media, that she actually, the people that are investing in her,
Yeah, she's actually
giving to her
used
group, is getting preferential seating
correct.
in the actual case.
Well, and
No, that's not a
here's
little
how this
fishy at all.
yeah, here's how the situation works. In a courtroom, first of all, you're supposed to be able to go sit if you happen to reside in that district. Well, remember the judge makes the decisions. It's his courtroom. He makes the decision. So he has allocated those spaces not based on if you live in the county or if you live in the town, live in the area to go sit in. He's given that list to his daughter. She provides the lists of people that are and the seating arrangement. Now, if there's any seats left over, anybody that's sitting there that lives in that area can go in. But she is selling those basically. If you donate to this campaign to preserve democracy, remember that's what they're saying, to help put Trump under the jail, then if you would like to come to New York and sit in on this historic trial, you can do so, and we'll make sure you get a preferential seat by making such and such of a donation. Talk about a conflict. I mean, you can't get any clearer than that, John. But anyway, back on the setting the stage. So with Hunter, you've got a favorable judge, you got a favorable jury. With Trump, you've got a jury, the 97% don't like him. Already polled, it showed that when they were listed as jurors. And you've got a judge who has demonstrated that he has given money to Joe Biden. Okay. He's made campaign contributions to Joe Biden. And his daughter's making millions off of it. So that's the stage that's been set. Now, what happens on the case itself? Well, you talk about Trump for a minute. What does the judge do? He takes unconstitutional and ridiculous oversight of his court. Here's the way the system's supposed to work. You are tried based on the evidence of each indictment. 12 must vote in favor of guilt, or you have a hung jury, or they vote not guilty. That's just the way it works. He changes the rules. First time in history, anywhere in the country. No, no, no. There are 34 counts. So if you four vote that he's guilty on these, but you don't think he's guilty on the others, as long as all 12 of you agree that he's guilty of one of those charges, they don't have to all be the same charge. As long as he's guilty of something, then we're going to apply the law that he's guilty of all. That's unheard of. That's not even law. That's made up. But that's the authority he's exercising over his court. Now let's go back to Biden. What is Biden doing? Well, his attorneys handle it a little differently. You remember, it's a tougher case for Biden, not for the outcome. I'm going to tell you what the outcome is going to be in a second. But it's a tougher case for his attorneys because Biden, here's what happens. You have, and this is the ironic part about it, John. Here's where I can sit back and just bend over laughing. For all these years, the Democrats have said, guns are bad. You can't have a gun. We're going to make it so it's difficult for you to get a gun. If you own a gun, you have to go through all these background checks. Oh, if you lie, we're not going to give you a fine. We're going to send you to jail. No, not for 30 days. You're going for years, buddy, because this is a federal offense. We're going to make it so difficult that you don't ever want to even try to think about buying a firearm. So they laid the groundwork. Joe Biden is the one that introduced the legislation to the Senate to make the sentences. We're talking about 15 years for a violation on a federal firearm registry form. That's a lot of time to fill out the wrong information to get sentenced for, and that's what there have been people away for, is years, not months, years. So they set the stage. They put their own trap together. Now suddenly the beloved Democrat, the president's son Hunter, has violated the law. Well, what can we do to get that downplayed? Well, here's the difficulty. Hunter has said it on his laptop. He's got video on his laptop at that time, high as a kite on cocaine. He wrote it in his book that he was taking cocaine at the time, okay? But yet he fills out the form and he checks no. So it seems like black and white, open and close, right? Well, no. Here's where they've got a little ray of hope for them. This happens repeatedly when you purchase firearms. This is not unusual. John's in a hurry. I get as much information as I can. He didn't have his driver's license or something. So he calls me later and I put the additional information in on a supplemental and submit it. Okay. That's just standard. So what is their excuse? Aha. When Hunter signed it, it was not checked. No, that he had not used drugs. Somebody, because there is evidence that there was a supplemental put on. When they did the supplemental, somebody must have checked that box for him. So he didn't lie. He didn't say he wasn't using drugs. Somebody else checked that box. Now here's the problem with that scenario, John. In a court of law, that's called hearsay. Okay, I just said John didn't. I have no evidence, but John didn't check the box. That's hearsay. Now here's where it becomes admitted as evidence. If the guy that sent in the form said that's correct, I had the form, I was filling it out, the pen slipped, and it slipped over the no thing, and it wasn't really supposed to be checked, it was accidentally. Now I have corroborating evidence. That can be entered into the court system. Hearsay cannot. What is the judge saying in Hunter's case? Oh wow. Yeah, maybe he didn't check the box. Maybe somebody else. Let's explore that. Let me allow that in as evidence. So you see, he's already set the stage to be able to say, well, there's reasonable doubt. Did Hunter really check the box? No, we know he signed it. We know he said that he was using drugs. But did he really say he wasn't using drugs through the fags, or did somebody else check that box? If you can't prove, remember, it should have never been admitted because it's hearsay, but now that it's been admitted, if you can't prove that maybe somebody else didn't, that's enough reasonable doubt. This case needs to be dismissed, or you need to find him not guilty.
And on top of that, as you said, it's in Delaware, where probably the majority of the people vote for him, and the star witness happens to be Joe Biden's other son, dead son's wife, and Hunter Biden's, I think, at one time,
Mistress.
mistress.
He was sleeping with his brother's wife.
Biden happened to fly out and go see his daughter right before the case. Now, that's not something he normally does on a regular, former daughter-in-law. That's not something, or widow. That's not something he does on a regular basis with her. It just happened to be like the week before the trial. And then on top of that, now the first lady is going to happen to be in the courtroom. Boy, they're not putting the squeeze on this thing in any way, shape, or form.
Here's what's funny about what you just said, John. He has never paid a visit to Hallie Biden. First time he's ever paid a visit was a few days before the trial. Now he has come out publicly and said, I'm not involved with this case. My son stands by himself. I'm not using any influence. Interesting. They changed his schedule for this week. You know he's spending this week? He's spending it in Delaware.
Right. He's staying in Delaware.
Yeah, and he's not just staying in a basement. He's going out bike riding so that the whole town can see him up and down. He's got his motorcade going out to lunch. He's making sure that town understands something. I've been your senator for 50 years. I've been your vice president for 8. Now I'm your president. All of y'all got some kind of favor, or your parents got some kind of favor, or somebody in your family got a favor for me over that length of time. Just kindly reminding you that it's payback time. That's my son. I want you to make sure you understand that's my son sitting before this jury, and y'all better do the right thing.
Make sure he gets a fair trial.
Right. Make sure you do the right thing. What is the right thing as far as he's concerned? He's already told it. He didn't check that box. I don't know how that got checked, but somebody else checked it. End of discussion. Let's all go
home. I noticed that that this judge is playing fast and loose with the rules right at the moment, where the exact opposite happened on the other trial.
Yeah, what's interesting, John, is Trump's trial was 5 weeks. This will probably be about 4 or 5 days. It'll be over quick. They've already got the outcome determined. There's no need to waste a whole lot of time. They got other things to do.
Well, I would say that they also already had the outcome determined in the other case as well.
No question. So,
all right. let's save. So so folks, I'm going to have both Michael Letz and I'm going to have David Pyne on. My audience is familiar with both of you, both great minds. So I want to save the Trump case for both of you together. Let's go to something else that hasn't necessarily hit the news cycle, but something I'm sure that you are aware of. But it does have to do with all of this. Merrick Garland was asked today before the Congress. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this.
I see.
Did you coordinate with Alan Braggs? Did you coordinate with Letitia James? And did you coordinate with, I forget the other person that he was asked about?
Fannie
He,
Willis.
Fannie Willis. He refused to answer that question.
It's interesting the way he answered it and the way Matt handled the question. He said, you know, we correspond with DA offices all across the country. So here's what Matt said. Let me make it very simple for you. I'm only interested in three. I'm not interested in whether you coordinated them, whether you did strategy or not. All I want is very simple. Whatever communication you sent them, whatever they sent back to you is public information under the Freedom of Information request. Will you commit to giving us that? I can't do that. But send us your letter and we'll review it. So Matt Smart, no, what you're telling me is send me the letter and I'll bury it for a couple months. Then I'll take 2 or 3 months to figure out an answer. Then I'll take another 2 or 3 months to have it hand delivered back to you. And Matt said, no, that's
With
not an
a
answer.
bunch of it blacked out.
Well, it's a
Sorry.
bunch of it blacked out. Matt said, no, that's not an answer. It's a very simple question. Will you give me all the because by law you're required to? No, we will not. We will not. And then Matt looked at him and said, okay, so hold on. You won't give us the transcripts, not the transcripts, the tapes of the transcripts of the special counsel heard. And now we understand why, because the White House has said they were edited. Of course, they're downplaying it. Oh, we only made grammatical corrections, or if he stuttered, we clarified the word, but we didn't change anything. Fine, then let me make that determination on my own. Let me listen and read at the same time. No, we won't do it. We're not going to turn on. You have no choice. Congress has the authority over the executive branch. We're equal branches of government, but you are required to respond to oversight. Part of oversight is I can't do oversight if I don't understand what you're doing. So the law says that I'm entitled to look at everything that you're doing. We're not going to do it. In other words, screw the Constitution. I'm not giving it to you. You can hold me in contempt if you want. Nobody's going to pick me up. What are you going to do about it? That's what's shocking. This is how far this administration has gotten. Thumb your nose at the Constitution and at any other branch. We're in control. And if you don't like it, tough.
The level of arrogance to me is surprising. The level of, you would have thought that. Now, the good thing is Matt Gaetz didn't let him off the hook.
Right.
But also, it's like the questions that have been asked to Merrick Garland, to Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI. Did you have any Did you have any undercover people in January 6th? And the answer is no. I'm surprised he couldn't find a way to squirrel out of that question.
Well, I think it's their arrogance. They've gotten to the point now, and this is what I was telling people on the show I was just on before I came on yours. They don't care about you. We know that. They could care less what you think. They could care less about your vote. They have one objective in mind. You see, you have to understand, we're talking about politics now. Joe is so far down the hole. Anybody with any sense knows Joe Key is not electable in November, okay? So forget about trying to bump his poll numbers up or trying to say things that you might want to hear, John. We're not going to play that game anymore. Well, the game we're going to play now is how do we maintain control? So I don't care about what you think. I don't care about whether you're voting for me or not anymore. We're going to maintain control. We're going to get you mad enough to where it's putting Trump in jail, whether it's trying to assassinate him, whether it's walking in and just shutting down the court and letting Hunter walk out free. We're going to create enough civil discourse to where it looks like there is a civil war going on. We're going to say it's these crazy MAGA conservatives, and we're going to declare martial law. We're going to suspend the election, and we're going to say, now, look, we're not trying to be a dictatorship. We're going to sort through all this, and at some point in time, we'll get back to normal, and we'll have elections again. But for right now, we're in control. End of discussion. That's what they want. They could care less about whether you like or don't like what they're doing anymore.
Let's see. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next subject. Law enforcement. So the Biden administration is fueling the border crisis with reported mass amnesty. What's that
Well,
going to do on the border?
here's what's happening. Let's define what they're talking about amnesty. There are 350,000 pending cases of illegal immigrants. And remember, these are the ones we catch. These are not the millions that are already out there. And what are their cases? Their cases, 350,000, are to be heard by judges to simply say, why do you think you should be allowed in America? What is your basis for requesting asylum? You know, are you being persecuted? You're being tortured? What is it? Well, the Biden administration has decided, you know what? You don't need to know what their reason is. We're just right now ordering the courts to drop all 350,000 cases. He said, well, then what does that mean? Since we haven't decided whether you're qualified for asylum, you have to go home. No. We're just dropping the case. That means you can walk out the court door anytime you want to. You're free of your own will. Go home, stay here. Nobody's going to mess with you. Nobody's going to ask you any more questions. You're free. Do whatever you want to do. That's what he's going to do. He has ordered 350,000 cases to be dropped. He doesn't have the legal authority to do that, but he's doing it anyway. This is why I got back to the issue that I just raised to you. They're so blatant now. They don't care what you think, John. They don't care for your vote anymore. They don't care what the Constitution says. They're going to do what they feel like is necessary to maintain power. And that's where it's at. That's where the sad shape we're in as of this moment.
And to me, the other concern is by even stating that there may be mass amnesty, it will bring over a whole bunch more people.
No question.
Okay. All right. Let's take another. Let's go to another topic. Uh, there was recently another deadly ambush in Minnesota. Um, I feel terrible for the officers that are involved in these things, but the community, especially such as in Minnesota, I don't feel quite as bad for. And forgive me, call me cynical on this. Uh, there was a mass shooting, or not a mass shooting, excuse me, a shooting of a young police officer in Minneapolis, and then also just the other day there was a shooting of uh, two New York police officers who were attempting to stop someone, a illegal alien, who happened to be on a scooter.
Correct.
And why were they going after someone on a scooter? They were going the wrong way. Well, why are you going after someone on the wrong way? Well, you know what the criminals happen to be doing lately is hopping on those scooters, running around, taking people's phones, purses, and just
Correct.
taking off on them. Why is that? And actually, that's a perfect thing to do because you don't look necessarily nefarious driving around, going around on the scooter. But on top of that, hey, you can only run for so long, but those scooters can go at top speed for quite some time.
Correct.
So,
And they're doing this all across the world. This is their pattern. Their MO, criminals across Europe and across Africa and other places. So they've learned it well. So they're bringing it here to America now.
and if I understand correctly, that one happened to be a Venezuelan. So I want to go to these two stories. Both of these stories, what do they have in common? Well, I'm not hearing about a lot of these shootings in Utah. I'm not hearing about a lot of these shootings in South Carolina. I'm not hearing about these shootings in Texas. I'm not hearing about a lot about, especially in red areas in Texas. I'm not hearing about these shootings in Florida. I'm hearing about these in Minneapolis, where there just happened to be some George Floyd riots, and defund the police, and in New York City, where defund the police happened to be really big. So tell me,
Correct.
is there any connection between these two that you can see?
Certainly, there's a connection. I mean, there's no question about that. The connection is this: you remember, you have to go from the premise that we just talked about. We don't care about your vote anymore. We want to know what we can do to maintain control. So let me go ahead and start stirring the pot in areas that are easily stirrable, such as in Minneapolis, New York, and other locations. And let me try to make sure that we send a clear message that we support doing away with our law enforcement. That we support your attacking them. We're not going to do anything about it. Let's stir it up really good, make people really scared. Because you remember, why do I want you to be scared? I got to have some way, John, of keeping myself in power. And if that means convincing you that local and state law enforcement are worthless, suspend them and give us the federalization of law enforcement, or whether it means you're going to start creating riots out there and then I can bring in martial law, whatever I need to do, I'm headed towards doing everything I can. I'm circling the wagons to keep myself in power for as long as possible. And they thought Trump was a threat to democracy.
Well, let me ask you this. And we've got David Pyne joining us here momentarily. I'll be bringing him on to kind of finish this thought process. You and I said that this was going to be the result of the defund the police.
Correct.
And it's coming home to roost, but it's not really coming home to roost in a lot of Republican areas. Are we starting to see? Um, are we starting to see these Democrat areas going, "Hey, give us our law enforcement back"? David will be bringing you on momentarily.
Yes, a lot. It's not, I don't even call it Democratic areas. It's just reasonable people realizing that, 2 + 2 does equal 4. You take cops away, you get violent crime. You put cops back, you reduce crime, you make my area safer. And they're tired of being pawns, because you have to understand the administration is manipulating the situations to derive the narrative they're looking for. And you remember, their narrative is they don't care about you. They don't care whether you vote for them. They don't care whether you're feeling good or feeling bad. They have one issue in mind, and that is to maintain power and control. Because if they can do that, then they'll set the stage to make sure that their democracy survives forever. So will have election fraud continuously. They'll set the stage. They'll permanently put in place their plan to maintain control indefinitely. They
Well,
haven't done it yet. They're still working on it. That's why they need a little bit more time. That's why they desperately need to stay in control for another 4 years.
and if they stay in control another 4 years, unfortunately, we're going to have major issues. But
Well, two things will happen. I was asked that question on the show just a minute ago. You're either going to have a civil war or you're going to have a revolution. Because, there are too many Americans that are seeing what's going on that are simply not going to sit by and let it happen. And when I say you're going to have one of those two, the third thing is what we've been pressing for. We've been doing it on your show for some time, is a military tribunal. The military finally saying, look, these people are disregarding the Constitution that we've been sworn to uphold and protect. We're going to step in and hold people accountable. But you don't have any more options other than those.
Well, Michael, let's bring in David Pyne.
Hey, David, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mike?
Doing fine. Always a pleasure
So,
to have you.
two of my favorite guests, Michael Letz and David Pyne. David, thank you so much for joining us. Michael, thank you for being here. David and I are already today on Talk with John on K-Talk. Already talked about the trial and what's going on, the 34 count indictment. David Pyne, let me give his byline real quickly for a reminder of our audience, but also to bring up and refresh or bring up to Michael and way of introduction. of David to Michael. There we go. So David T. Pyne, Esquire, is a former U.S. Army Combat Arms and Headquarters Staff Officer who was in charge of armaments cooperation with the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas from 2000 to 2003 with a MA in National Security Studies from Georgetown University. He currently serves as Executive Vice President of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security and as a member of the Committee on the Present Danger of China. I put the of instead of the hyphen. He recently served as Defense and Foreign Policy Advisor to former Republican President candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. He also co-authored the best-selling new book, Catastrophe Now, America's Last Chance to Avoid an EMP Disaster, and his new book, Restoring Strategic Deterrence, will be published in early fall 2024. He is also the editor of the Real War newsletter at dpyne.substack.com and is a contributor to the National Interest at dpyne, dpyne.substack.com. All right. That's a way of introduction. So, gentlemen, let's get into it. Let's talk about, and I'll set the stage to begin a little bit. Let's talk about the 34-count indictment. Trump convicted. This is David's headline. Trump convicted of 34 felonies in Biden-ordered Soviet-style show trial. Biden succeeded in transformation of America from a constitutional republic to a corrupt one-party police state, as Trump will likely have to campaign under house arrest after the July 11th sentencing. Now, I want to say this. I've got a few of my liberal friends that have chirped in my ear. Oh, you know, this isn't like Biden's not trying to coordinate this in any way. You know, he has nothing to do with it. I'm like, that's ridiculous. And here's one of the proofs. He just happens to set up the sentencing is going to happen on July 11th. That's a Thursday, right before the following Monday, which is the beginning of the Republican campaign, or not campaign, the Republican convention. So, David, let's kind of let you start the ball on this, and then we'll let Michael jump in and we'll go from there.
Well, thanks again for having me on. It's great to be on with Michael as well. This is election interference on an unprecedented scale. We've never seen this level of election interference. Sure, the Biden, the Democrats stole the 2020 election in multiple different ways. Sure, the FBI, tried to get rid of Trump with the fake Trump-Russia collusion scandal and various other means, through suppressing the Biden China scandal with the Hunter Biden laptop. But we've never seen a sitting president, go after his main and leading presidential rival to the point of where he's trying to not only prosecute and imprison President Trump, but potentially get him killed in Riker Island State Prison. So this is essentially what I've foreseen as a potential new dictatorship in America, and it's we've got a president who's he's in bed with China. He's essentially our first Manchurian president, as President Trump has stated, and he's doing their bidding. He's destroying America from within, weakening us against external enemies. And we're facing an existential threat. And, for the first time ever, I have to say that the greatest existential threat we're facing is not from Russia and China. It's not from nuclear weapons. It's not from super EMP attack, which my organization has been championing, awareness of for the past dozen years. It's from President Joe Biden and his attempts to destroy America's God-given constitutional republic and make it, unrecognizable and essentially make it a carbon copy of Zelensky's dictatorial regime in Ukraine.
Well, let me throw this in before I hand over any other comments to Michael Letz, excuse me. When Tucker Carlson interviewed Putin, basically Tucker Carlson asked him the question, well, there's a lot of concerns in the something to the effect, there's a lot of concerns in the United States and foreign, the national community is concerned how you've imprisoned your political candidates. And basically Putin said, kind of like what Joe Biden's doing to Trump. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, this is the greatest threat in our nation's history. And quite frankly, David, you're right. I'm sure you work with a number of in the position that John was saying that you have been involved with. I know you work with a lot of the intelligence agencies as well. And I've never seen to where we had directors of agencies utilize their resources to undermine a presidential candidate and a presidency, and to use the full resources of the taxpayers of the American government to bring about a communist regime, which is what we're looking at now. The question is, how do they, now that some of the evidence has come out, how do they I was telling John earlier before you came on to him, the Biden administration at this point could care less what your vote is, whether you like him or not. Their entire strategy is how do we maintain power? And of course, they have a number of different options. They can look at creating some kind of civil discourse and declaring that, we're going to have to step in, suspend the election, and move to martial law. We can just make sure, and of course, they're probably a combination of all these. We can make sure we know that they have caught us and identified how we compromise elections, but they haven't done anything to fix it. So we'll just make sure that we have a disregard. We don't care what the American people think. We're going to portray it that we win by stuffing ballot boxes again and mailing ballots, et cetera, et cetera. And, the American people don't like it. Tough, because we're controlling the executive branch, which is controlling, the populace by law enforcement, judiciary, et cetera. And so if you don't like it, you can either leave or we'll put you in jail. And that is what their strategy is. That's what they're moving fast forward to do. And I was just on a previous show a few minutes ago, and they asked, is there any hope? And David, I believe this, the Constitution provides for a military tribunal. The military can intervene. Now, I have people ask me all the time, how come they haven't? Quite frankly, they make sure that all the evidence is there, gathered, easily understandable to prove the point as to why a military tribunal would be necessary. I think that's all in the place. But if we don't intervene with a military tribunal, then we have two other options. Either we have a civil war or we have a revolution. Civil war is us against each other. A revolution is overthrow the government. And I think that they're positioning themselves so they don't care whether we do either one, because they feel like they control the executive branch, the Department of Defense, federal agencies, et cetera, and they can squelch and eliminate anybody that doesn't like them anyway. And then they'll maintain control for as long as they need to be, because once they need about 4 more years, David, to complete what they were not able to complete this time around. And if they can stay in control for a while longer, they'll fix it so there are no fair elections anymore. I lived in Mexico. I grew up in Mexico. My parents were missionaries. Mexico is a socialistic state, as you're almost communist, as you're very well aware. It was always ironic. You'd have a presidential election time. You'd have 2 or 3 candidates, but everybody knew what candidate was going to win and by what the margin was going to be. It was all a facade. They'll do the same thing. They'll try to make Americans feel good that we still have a democracy. You still get to vote. But the outcome will already be rigged. They'll know exactly what it is. And they will squelch anybody that brings active opposition to that. That's where we're at today. So the question is, what are we going to do to step up to change the course of history in the next 4 or 5 months? There's a lot of work to be done.
Mike or David, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with much of what Michael said. I will say that I think, if there was to be some kind of armed rebellion or civil war, the rebels would get crushed.
I mean,
Right.
because the Democrats have sole control of the U.S. military. Yes, of course, the U.S. military could splinter. Many of the armed services members, such as myself, would refuse to obey illegal orders and
Agreed.
use deadly force against Americans. But the movie Civil War was a little bit. I don't know if you've seen that, but it was
It was done for a reason.
yeah,
Released now for a reason.
it was a little bit disturbing. They portrayed the president as kind of a Trump-like president who essentially, a rebellion started after he crushed some Antifa insurrection. And at the end of the movie, he's assassinated, with multiple former U.S. soldiers pulling the trigger, and then they surround him as if they just killed a bag of big game, deer or something.
Right.
And I think what one of the things that the Biden administration is trying to do by what I believe is going to be not only house arrest, since I wrote that article, I think it's going to be imprisonment in Riker prison, is that I think they're trying to get the conservatives to go violent. I think that's the Biden administration playbook. They want a violent insurrection, because then that gives them just like Hitler. I've been saying that Biden is a new Hitler, but he's not Hitler in 1945, following the Holocaust. He's Hitler in 1933. He still pretends to be, a law-abiding president, U.S. leader. But if we get to the point where there's some kind of national emergency he can proclaim, especially if there's some kind of conservative insurrection, a real insurrection, not like J6, because J6 was
not an insurrection.
It was not an insurrection. It was a mostly peaceful protest in which there was limited violence by some bad apples, much of which was FBI, provocateur, created essentially or provoked. But if there's a real insurrection, they could crush it, and he could declare martial law, suspend the elections, and then he's a real dictator, and America's republic is lost. So I would wholeheartedly agree with Michael. We have 4 to 5 months to try to figure out what to do to save our republic. I believe that what we can do is exclusively to win the election. Currently, there's a poll that shows Trump leading Biden by 12 points. It's the Rasmussen poll. That was taken before the Trump conviction. I think he's probably lost a couple points since then. But I would say he's probably leading the polls about 9 to 10 points in a free and fair election. That it would be a landslide in favor of Trump. And I don't think the conviction would change that outcome. The problem is, just like they pulled out all the stops, between lawfare and actually changing votes with Smartmatic voting algorithms. They have the means to essentially decide most likely the exact percentage of Biden's winning margin. And I think that's why we don't see, in any, as I've been saying, in any other situation in past elections, Biden has bungled so much. He's just such a doddering idiot. He has got gaffes, crazy gaffes every day that make Dan Quayle's misspell of 1988 look like nothing. And they just blow it off because there's a regime media that covers it all up and minimizes it and says, well, Trump's just as bad, or he's made a couple gaffes as well, and he's almost as old. President Trump is amazing. I haven't always been a supporter of President Trump, but I have to say, not only is he a tremendous America First patriot in line of what I've always hoped for 3 decades at least, in a president, he's also, is very mentally competent. He can speak for hours on end in great detail, answer every question, and he's got his complete wits, and he's got the right instincts. Much like Reagan. Reagan wasn't brilliant, but he had almost all the right instincts that helped him, set national policy in the right direction. And Biden's just doesn't have that. He's a puppet. He gets veto. Not only, I mean, in one sense, he's a dictator, but it's really not Biden himself. It's a dictator. It's his regime, because I believe that there's kind of likely a senior level cabinet cabal, of maybe Austin and Blinken and Jake Sullivan and probably Garland, that kind of make all the decisions, and Biden just kind of says what they want him to say. But when we have a president who goes, makes a speech and then walks off without taking any questions, and says, "Sorry, my staffers, my 30-year-old staffers told me I'm not allowed to answer a question." I mean, that just shows what an idiot he really is.
Well, there's no question, and those are the times it's actually him. There are plenty of other people that get to play Biden's role, and they're all doing the same what they're instructed to do. It is a collective organization that is what I call it, the deep state, that is running the show and the operation very clearly.
Absolutely.
So something else. I mean, is there any evidence of that? Well, I'd point to evidence number one, especially with this specific case, is Alvin Bragg. Underneath him has one of the senior
DOJ
law people. Happens
third in line at DOJ.
Third in line at DOJ, and I forget his name
Matthew
right off the top of my
Colangelo.
head. I want to say, Matthew Colangelo. He was over at the DOJ, and then he happened to come over and say, "Oh, by the way, I think I'm going to leave. Here I am, Alvin Bragg. Please take me on board."
Well, his official reasons, he and Alvin go back a long ways, and he was excited that he became the DA. So he's going to give up all this federal pay, all this additional, just because they're brothers, buddy, and he's going to go help his brother out.
And on top of that, let's not forget, none of these were announced, "Hey, we're going after Donald Trump," until he announced
Correct.
his presidency.
That's right. Yep. And right after that happened.
So I want David Pyne, you're David Pyne, Esquire. I want your thoughts a little bit on how often have you seen someone go from third in line at the DOJ down to be working as underneath the district
DA.
attorney in some.
I've never seen it happen where someone decided to take a demotion from acting assistant attorney general of the United States to assistant DA of New York City. I mean, that's a tremendous demotion. Of course, I mean, there's every evidence that he was dispatched and put on a mission by Garland to serve as the coordinator. Essentially the lead prosecutor in that office, to ensure that Biden's mandate, which he gave to Garland, which was actually something Garland initially didn't want to do, which is prosecute and try to imprison Trump, that would be successful, and that Biden's objective of having his leading presidential challenger who would beat him in any free and fair election, almost under any circumstances, including conviction and imprisonment, to be jailed and perhaps subjected to violent attacks in prison.
What do you think the chances is that could happen in jail? Both of you with your
Well,
Michael Letz, you being in law enforcement, how likely do you, and knowing some people on the special or on the Secret Service detail for president that have been there before, how likely do you think that is to be allowed to
that's
happen?
the key. Is you always have insiders that can thwart the best of plans. Now, should it be able to happen? Absolutely not. The Secret Service, of course, you remember you've got people in Congress now saying that his protection details should be stripped. Not just his, but anybody that is a convicted felon should not be entitled to a protection detail. But assuming that doesn't pass, and he still has his protection detail, your protection detail is only as good as your biggest mole. And when you have a mole that's saying, "Look, we're going to have we're going to change the shift, and you're going to stay an additional 30 minutes." Of course, they tell the other person that when you come in, you're going to come in an additional 45 minutes so that there's a short timetable where he's left unprotected. It can happen. And I mean, you know, it does. I've seen it. It's not that the Secret Service is doing a bad job. It's just when you have big players who have a lot of clout and have a lot of muscle to be able to get superiors to issue conflicting orders, even if it's only for a short period of time, that gains them the opportunity. And they're masters. They know how to do it. They know how to get a job. Which is why I kind of want to ask David his perception. He and I may agree or may differ here on this one. Knowing the tremendous exposure, let's use that legal definition, exposure of the president being subjected to some kind of a sentencing, prison, house arrest, etc. Do you feel that the and there are a lot of very strong felt conservative supporters, shall we say, let's classify them that way, will sit idly by and allow such a transaction to occur?
I don't think there's much we can do. I mean, our hopes are pinned on the Supreme Court, and when it came to saving our constitutional republic from undemocratic bloodless coup by the Democrats in 2020, the Supreme Court voted 7-2 not to hear the case. So the more analysis I've done, the more I think that the Supreme Court is going to do nothing until after the election to get Trump released out of jail. Even though, the case for reversal on appeal couldn't be any stronger. I mean, it's the 100% chance that if it goes to the Supreme Court, they will, reverse the conviction and the sentencing. Do I think Biden wants Trump dead? I think so. I mean, in general terms, I think he does. I mean, if he had his wish, Trump would be dead tomorrow. But do I think he's going to try to, take him out? I think that would be. I don't think he's going to try to do that. I think he's very happy to put his life in jeopardy, put his personal safety in jeopardy. I think he would be happy to see him stabbed. I don't think Trump's going to die in jail. I'll just say that right now. I think that Biden will be contented to have his leading presidential or only real presidential opponent in prison and with living in squalor and horrible conditions. For a 78-year-old who was convicted of a white-collar crime that he didn't commit, in a case where only 10% of people convicted of the same offense would go to jail for even a single day.
Correct.
This is a crime that he supposedly committed to influence the election, but he didn't commit the offense. Actually, he didn't commit the offense at all. It was apparently Hope Hicks who logged a legal expense as a legal expense, and she did so when Trump was president and already in the White House. So, I mean, the case is it would be laughable if it weren't so, scary and tragic for our future as a constitutional republic, because our republic's going to be gone if Trump is in prison and the Supreme Court doesn't act to get him out before the election day. I mean, that's it. I think America's finished.
So, David, why do you think that they won't take up the case before the election? Speaking of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think the Supreme Court is, they're loath to get involved in cases like this. I mean, for me, it's a constitutional crisis, but because Trump is not president, I don't think they would necessarily view it that way. So it's just based on there's really no precedent for a case like this. But in general, in similar cases where, where the defendant isn't a presidential candidate, I think they would, wait to see the process go through and the appeals process go through in New York, all the way through the New York Supreme Court. The problem is it could be a year before the case is even heard by the New York appeals court that has to go through to get to the New York Supreme Court.
Well, I would agree with you on this, David. If they go ahead and give him jail time, they'll delay any. They will not be in a hurry to hear an appeals. I can tell you that.
Just based on your experience for the
based on
Supreme
my
Court.
experience, I mean, here's the sad part about the court. They have become kind of their own extreme, are gone off the ranch, shall we say? And they use great logic to do so. They're just kind of like with COVID. Okay, we got COVID, so we can't hold court, so you don't no longer get in a expedited trial because of the fact that we have this COVID crisis. Courts are going to cases are going to back up for years, and now they've established that. So now everybody's always behind. They never get caught up, so they can always say, David, oh yeah, we're going to get to you as quick as we can, but we are backed up. And as quick as we can is now not defined as a week, it's defined as a year or 18 months or 24 months. And as you said, unless somebody who has the authority is willing to intervene, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
So, Mike, it leads to my next question, dude. I'm just curious to get your thought. Obviously, there are a lot of veterans and special ops and others who are wrongly separated because of the COVID-19 vaccination and so many other things, who feel very strongly that the country's in the wrong direction. If they were to begin to, shall we say, express concern, do you think the military would move to crush them too?
Not unless they were violent. Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, what we would see in the event Trump were imprisoned in July. And by the way, I'm an alternate national delegate, so I'm going to be going to Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, and likely will not get the opportunity to hear from the presidential, nominee of our party. And even if I do, it may be from prison. It would be virtual. So I think we'd see a lot of rallies. I mean, I think in major cities, but I think they'd be almost entirely peaceful. I think we'd have, FBI informants and the potential for, for a limited potential for violence. I wouldn't anticipate there would be much. So I don't think the army would be brought in. It would have to be a lot worse. Like if Trump were to be killed in prison, that could spark, some kind of revolution. But right. I think his imprisonment alone, I think we'd see massive rallies with lots of flags, patriotic,
a lot of demands, but nothing with no action.
Loud speaking, probably. I wouldn't anticipate any real violence. No, rifles or anything like that. I mean, you'd see a few maybe here and there, but I don't think the military would be brought in.
My guess is Donald Trump goes to jail. He's going to have some rhetoric, but one of the things he will say is cool your jets, folks. We don't, he did it with January 6th. Hey, everybody peacefully go home. It's time to go home. I think he will give a very similar statement. Hey, I'm happy to be in this fight. This is where I belong. This is where I want to be. He's already said that to an extent. He's already said, I'm willing to go to jail. I think he's already starting to lay that groundwork, and I think he will continue to even trumpet that more. And frankly, he will look like a victim. I mean, he will look like a victim that was not necessarily, he will portray himself as a victim. Hey, victim mentality, but he will be very clear in this was a sham trial and we're going to fight this. And I think he will say, have people keep calm and try to have cooler heads prevail. At least I sure hope that will be the case. I think that will be the message he'll give out.
I would agree that that'll be the message I think that he will give out. I think what my concern lies is I think the American public has gotten to the point now where we hear what needs to be done. We hear about the actions being taken, but nobody's doing anything. Everybody gets away with it. And I think the American people are so tired of justice not being executed that I wonder whether there's a breaking point. There had to be a breaking point in 1776. What is the breaking point for the American people now? Or are we so out of touch with the sense of duty anymore that we're willing to subject ourselves to anything as long as it doesn't cost us an effort or battle.
Yeah, I mean, I think I view the Democrats as kind of a criminal mafia, almost a communist organization, minus the mass murder. They're obviously, I don't think we're anywhere close to where we would need to be to justify any kind of armed rebellion. I 100% oppose that, even if Trump's in prison, even if they steal the next election. But we have to do as much as we can, to follow Trump's advice to peacefully and patriotically make our voices heard, and that means we get everyone to vote. Everyone we know, we get to vote. We come on programs like yours, that were podcasts that are hosted by patriots like yourself, John, and writing letters, whatever the heck it takes. We need to expose, align with Republicans, the courageous ones, not the uniparty ones like Speaker Johnson. That's a total pansy and, Biden supporter, essentially.
That's a frustration of mine with Johnson. Johnson was there, was it last week or the week before, to quote unquote show his support for Donald Trump in the courtroom. Where has he been in any statement since then?
Well, and then right after that, he issued this statement. We're going to use whatever tools, whatever arsenal at our disposal to correct this injustice. Well, the first thing you can do is, Congress controls the purse strings. The budget starts in the House. He's the Speaker of the House. You can, I realize it's not popular, but you can, pass all kind of appropriation changes to the bills if you so desire. I don't see anybody moving to do that. I don't see anybody moving to solidify a military council. I don't see, so you're giving me rhetoric, but you're not giving me any action. How long do you think the American people will tolerate that?
Well, I think Senator Mike Lee has got a letter that's being circulated, signed by 11 conservative Republican senators, in which he basically is saying, he's going to shut the government down, not to that extent, but like a partial shutdown. He's not going to approve any
no passage of any legislation will happen until some other things occur, which I respect that. But of course, you and I know 11 is not. I mean, you only need 51 votes to get legislation through the Senate. You don't need the 11 if you can figure out how to, rally the other 51 votes that you need.
Yeah, you need 41. Right.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see whether they can actually take any action. And where I'm picking up, David, across the country, is people are coming and talking to me now about, like, look, we hear all the rhetoric. We appreciate what you're saying across the country. But if we're not going to take any action, then, don't talk about it anymore. Because if you're going to do something about it, then let's do something about it. If you're not going to do anything about it, then we're already destroyed, and we might as well figure out where we're going from here.
Michael,
that's my fear.
What actions do you think they should take? The public should take? Because you've been on my show. Both of you have been on my show. And Michael, I know for sure we've had some callers call in and say, basically it's time for us to pick up our guns. And both you and I have said, whoa, hold on here. So what is your suggestion? What should they do?
Well, it's interesting in listening to what their suggestions are, and some of it's valid. I mean, technically the states have the sovereign rights, not the federal government. Technically, the sheriffs control the jurisdiction in their counties, etc. So their point is to use state power, local power, deputize locally, create state deputization, and utilize that state to pursue charges against any of these elected officials that would have occurred in that area. And then, of course, use them to lawfully, quote unquote, exercise warrants as they did against Trump, and arrest warrants and indictments through the DA's office, etc., and bring the same amount of consequences that we are seeing occurring now. Don't know if that would work or not. Or, of course, the other thing they kind of say, and that's where you and I, John, kind of draw the line is, well, let's just go ahead and raise up in arms and we'll just take them on, head on in the street. Problem with that is, as David's alluded to, uh, they still have a lot of muscle. Because even if the military stands down, you still have the executive, law enforcement, the Bureau, all the other agencies, and there's a lot of them. And they can garnish a lot of them and put them in one place at one time to contain those kind of issues. So it's interesting to listen to what their side is. The concerning part is the frustration. It's really boiling out there, David. And that's why I'm fascinated by what you say, in the sense that if they really do move forward to try to imprison the president, what kind of reaction will that be? I question, I'm siding with what you're saying in one sense, David. There may be everybody that wants to grab a gun and go out and free him, but we're living in a society now, people talk, but people don't do a whole lot of action anymore. We don't have the same the same spirit that they had in 1776. In 1776, that's enough. Give me my musket. We're lining up and we're going to, we're going to free ourselves from this tyranny. I think what I see now is a lot of, if I get the chance, that's what I'm going to do. But then when it actually comes to action, I'm not so sure they're doing it or not. I just like your perception, David, and whether you actually think the military would stand down if there was an action to do that.
Well, the problem is that Biden has replaced all the good Trump generals with his own apparatchiks, Biden generals.
I will agree.
So, they're woke generals. They're generals that agree with the deep state agenda. They view the protection of the Democrat Party as patriotism. And so, their view is that, Trump's a risk or danger. They view Trump, I think, in much the same way that we view Biden, as a clear and present danger to the national security of the United States. Biden talks a great game about domestic violent extremists in America that he's trying to crush. Whether it's nonviolent pro-life prayers, Catholic pro-life protesters,
Right.
or grannies that didn't even enter the Capitol building but are thrown in prison for 2 years just for showing up to support Trump.
Or a reporter that's on the grounds but
Right.
doesn't actually go in the building, serves jail time.
Yeah, but he's the real danger because he's destroying our country from within. He's making us vulnerable to enemy invasion. I mean, there's 85,000, 100,000 Chinese, likely special forces troops and airborne troops that have already entered our country as a kind of fifth column to conduct deep sabotage, assassinations, and critical infrastructure attacks beyond the lines if Biden decides to defend Taiwan against a Chinese blockade or invasion.
Right.
But one thing, one idea I do support is the formation of some kind of, ideally it would be state-sanctioned militia forces, but kind of like a reserve militia that would be an armed militia, but it would only be called up in defense of the states. If a state were being attacked by federal troops or something like that, not for any means to attack
Right.
any U.S. official or do anything mischievous, but only in purely self-defense purposes to keep the peace and to defend our citizens. That would be something that's something I've long supported.
Well, I think, on that particular note, David, you and I find commonality from this standpoint. I've said on John's show quite often that if we're going to restore law and order, it's gotten too big for law enforcement to do it. If we're going to take out all the illegal immigrants, talk about the drug cartels, the Chinese, and you're right, it's at least 80,000, it's probably more, the criminal element that's here. We have too many that we've allowed in this country now that law enforcement can't do that on its own. It's going to have to involve some kind of military assistance. And when I'm using the word military, I'm encouraging every state to have its own guard, fully implemented state guard that will have to be used in that state to help pull all these illegals unwanted, for lack of a better word, to be able to deport them. You're not going to be able to do that with just law enforcement alone. There's too many. They'll overwhelm you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should be some kind of state sanctioned type National Guard reserve force. So
Right.
whether we call it National Guard or not, it would be subject to the call up of the governor. Essentially,
I like more the term probably state militia, because frankly that's in the Constitution.
Yes, yeah.
That would be my thought. Michael, I want to say thank you for your time. I told you I'd keep you until about 7:15 your time. I've gone 15 minutes over that, so I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Really appreciate you and David joining me together at the same time. I wanted to get a little bit of back and forth. You from, you happen to know some people in the CIA and special forces. You happen to know a few Green Berets in your world. I wanted to get your thoughts, and then staff officer, I wanted to get his thoughts too, and so I really appreciate that.
Well, David, I will tell you this. We'll conclude this way. We certainly have a lot of commonality. We both painted pictures that nobody wants, whether it's a picture of continuing under an illegal, immoral regime, doing things to continue to erode democracy, locking up Trump, etc., or whether it is a confrontation and, holding people accountable through a military tribunal, whatever it might be. Nothing is appealing on the horizon, unfortunately. But we do, I think, can agree on one thing. We can't continue the way we are. Something's going to have to move in one direction or another. And I think we just need to hold true to our principles and values that this country was founded upon, freedom and liberty. And I'll see you on the other side, brother.
Okay, great to meet you, Michael. I appreciate all your service to our great country.
Same here. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to the struggle ahead. Okay, take care.
Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you being there. Thank you. All right. That was Michael Letz of Invest USA. David, thank you for allowing him to join us for a little bit. So let me ask you, how is the rest of the world looking at this? This interaction between the United States, that was in your piece as well. It was a little bit of thoughts from President Xi, and how do you think Putin and Russia and China are taking a look at this show trial that's going on?
Well, first I want to just answer one of Mike's questions, and I meant to answer it before he left the show. But I almost mentioned at the end. But I think that his idea of pursuing lawfare at this kind of state and county level against the Biden regime is a really good one. While I will always oppose armed insurrection or anything like that, rebellion, I do support nonviolent active resistance, kind of Gandhi style, where if it gets really bad, we just have mass disobedience. It's peaceful, but we do it that way. I support nullification, state nullification of illegal laws or unconstitutional edicts, but I also support kind of lawfare, used as lawfare has been used by the Biden weaponized DOJ against Trump and other law-abiding citizens. We should be using that against Biden and Democrat officials that are trying to impose this autocratic regime on the U.S. So I think that's a great idea as well. But in answer to your question, I think America is becoming a joke. It's becoming the laughingstock of the world. Putin and Xi. I think I mentioned in my article. I think President Xi Jinping has been, he's just as the old president of China, I think it was Hu Jintao, watched the 9/11, Twin Towers collapse multiple times. Was just laughing and smiling, because that's what he wants to do to America. What China has been wanting to do for America for 75 years. I think they're gonna, especially if Trump gets in prison. I mean, Trump is really the, he's the anti-China guy. I mean, granted, he wasn't always anti-China, but he's the one who talks the good game and actually he's the only president who's ever taken any action on, trade in terms of, tariffs and fighting back in the China's trade war against the U.S. So that's, I think China views him a little bit worrisomely. And, they're going to pull out all the stops to try to help Biden steal the election in 2024 to ensure that Trump loses. But I think they're just loving every moment of, and Putin, of course, is, like you said, from now on, he gets to say, well, I put Navalny in prison, but that's what you did to Trump. So, where do you get off on your high horse trying to talk down to Russia?
Right. Well, folks, I just want to say, I want to mention, hey, this is coming to you from Main Street Media, Utah, KMMU. We're live on X, Rumble, YouTube, and also you can go to our website at kmmu.org, and you can follow us on your favorite platform. So, and frankly, I appreciate Main Street Media Utah helping us provide this platform. I like having the additional video piece along with the audio, and also that we can live broadcast to both of those or all three of those platforms. I guess 4 when you throw in our website. I do want to come back to that is something I wanted to drill down just a little bit more with you as far as what you were going to do before talking about Xi Jinping. My concern with, and I think I even brought this up with you, is what I would love to do is see some Democrat come out, maybe the senator from West Virginia, come out and say, hey, folks, it's time for us to go guns down. Because the bottom line is, if you can do this to a president, you sure as heck can do this to a state senator. You can sure as heck do this to someone in the Senate. You sure as heck can do it to someone who is or has been in the Congress. You can do it. You can go after a president. You can go after them. And I'd like for them to just go, let's go guns down, folks. Let's take a step back. My opinion is it would be a really smart Democrat to come out and say, hey, he's been convicted. What we need to do is we need to just say, hey, Biden needs to come out and say he doesn't serve any jail time or something along those lines. You had a great thought on my show earlier. I said, pardon, you had another thought that was even better than that you thought he might do. But the bottom line is, one thought I also had is, if I was Barack Obama and whispering in this judge's ear, like I actually think is happening, or one of his people is actually doing, kind of seeing how you might have a DOJ member jumping on out with Alan Braggs and Letitia James and Fani Willis. This was mentioned in Matt Gaetz asked this question this morning. Hey, have you had any conversations with Alan Braggs, with Letitia James, or Fani Willis? And he wouldn't answer the question. So my statement to you is, going roundabout ways, what I would do if I was Barack Obama whispering in somebody's ear, I'd say, put him in prison for 1 day so we've got the image of him marching in. First of all, with you being a attorney, is that something that could legally be done? What would they have the ability to even just put him in jail? And then you had your thoughts on, well, it won't be for just 1 day, but your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Biden was smart, I mean, I know he wants Trump in prison. I think he wants him to die of old age in prison. I don't think there's any risk that he's going to try to kill him in prison or anything like that. I think he's enjoying the fact that Trump's life could be endangered. His person would be endangered from knife attacks and whatnot. But I'd probably say put him under house arrest, and he'd be under house arrest at Trump Tower for 6+ months. After the election, the Supreme Court would let him out. I don't think the American people would have too much of a problem with that. I think if, certainly the Republican Party would have, Trump supporters like you and myself, we'd have a big problem with that. But I mean, it's hard to say that, Trump living in luxury in a 5-star hotel and being able to, it's not just like he's in a home. He would likely have full range of, going up and down. I mean, he could install, he's got restaurants, fine dining, whatnot. It's not great. He's still a political prisoner, but the optics wouldn't be as bad, but if what I think he's going to do, send him in prison. And by the way, when I talked about commuting the sentence, it's unclear whether the president has the power to pardon or commute Trump's sentence, because these are state felonies that he was convicted of. But he could pardon him on the underlying charge. And obviously, Biden he's been manipulating this entire judicial process, which is bogus charges that Trump's being prosecuted on across the board. There's not one thing that Trump has done illegal that would justify any of these 91 different felonies with which he's been charged. So if he were to say, what I'm saying is, whether he actually came out and said commute the sentence, he could get Trump released on command, just so he could put Trump in prison on command. The judge Merchan, without a doubt, like he's in touch with obviously the mole and Colangelo. Colangelo's in touch with Garland. Garland's in touch with Biden. Biden and Garland are deciding whether to put Trump in prison, whether to give him house arrest, and then they just communicate whatever Biden wants to Judge Merchan, who's very corrupt. Obviously, his daughter's making reportedly millions from from this trial and conviction, and so that would be the best course. But I think knowing Biden, I think he would allow Trump to speak from prison. So he would set up a prison room, and the optics. I mean, he wouldn't be like in prison garb. He wouldn't have his hands handcuffed. He would be in a suit, just from a meeting room at a jail, and then he would accept the nomination and all that, address the conventionees, have an hour or whatever. I guess I would say just an hour, and then commute the sentence thereafter. Just do whatever he needs to get him out. And as you mentioned on the last show that you hosted that I was on earlier today, he could get all the photos, show that Trump being handcuffed, Trump being perp walked into a prison cell with bars. That's really all he needs. Just like you said, just one day in photo op. So he gets
right. It's all about the imaging. CNN, ABC, yep. CBS, NBC. And even Fox, right? Now, the concern is Donald Trump going to turn that around and make another $200 million off of it, raise another $200 million from it? But I think it would serve, at least to the mind of Biden, it would serve his purpose.
Yeah, if he could do that just for like 1 week and then put him under house arrest after that, pending appeal, then the Supreme Court releases him from house arrest at the Trump Tower, I guess the end of the year, November, after the election's over. I think that would accomplish Biden's purposes without having, the public really turn on him. Because obviously if Trump spends the entire campaign in prison, I mean, a lot of people are going to, even independents, I think, would turn on Biden, that maybe even think Trump's guilty. Maybe they think he's been treated fairly thus far. But if he goes to prison, I mean, even on CNN, they're talking. There was a CNN's chief legal analyst was saying this case is crap. Trump was convicted of 34 bogus felonies, and that's what CNN's saying. Now CNN's gotten it's kind of center left now. It used to be liberal like MSNBC, but it's not extreme like MSNBC. So you're much more likely to find some voices of reason on that network. I think it's fraught with political dangers to Biden, especially when Biden, he doesn't need to do any of this. He can win fair, not fair and square, but he can rig the election, 4 or 5 different ways. and have Trump be a free man and just say, look, he's a convicted felon. He's on probation. He gets drug tested, urine drug tested every 6 months or whatnot. But, we're not going to put him in prison. We're not going to give him house arrest. Damage is done. He's a convicted felon. He always will be. We think, we don't think the Supreme Court's going to reverse it on appeal. And that, I think that's the way he should go. Absolutely.
Well, also the other thing is, Biden's already kind of setting this up, saying, "Hey, this was, he was there in front of 12 of his peers, and they found him guilty, and this was a totally, how dare you say that this was rigged? This was not rigged. This was done in New York, and blah blah blah." I think he's already trying to set the narrative also for. I was like, Biden, why did Biden's team send out and say, we will do a presidential debate? I think this sets up for Biden being able to say, no, I'm not going to do the presidential debate, or I'm strictly only going to do it on my terms, completely my terms, because why would I ever have a debate? Why would I ever debate a felon?
That's exactly right. And that's what I said in my article that I wrote on late in the evening of March 30th, the day that this verdict was rendered. I think that this provides Biden the perfect opportunity to say, I'm not going to lower myself to debate a convicted felon. So I'm not going to debate. I'm going to, or some other excuse just to say, I'm going to wait till after maybe he'll just say, I'm going to wait until after sentencing. And if Trump doesn't go to prison, then I'll debate him. And then he'll go to prison, so then they'll say, well, I'd love to debate him. I'd love to debate Trump because I think I could beat the crap out of him. But unfortunately, I'm not allowed to because he's in prison.
He's in prison. Yeah, this sets up way too much. I'm sorry, it just looks
I guarantee 90% certainty. I think he's going to reschedule the debate till after sentencing. He'll find some excuse.
Okay. So, what are some other thoughts? So Biden is, and we mentioned this just a little bit. I mean, you mentioned a little bit. We talked around this a little bit, but you have in your article Biden's Nazification of America. I would agree with that, and here's where I'm going to go with that thought. Actually, Hitler wasn't the Hitler that took over and was the chancellor for Germany that wound up being the tyrant that he was in 1945. He didn't start out that way. He started with lawfare. He started with doing these type of things. This is exactly what Hitler started doing. Now, fortunately, I don't think we're going to have to deal with Biden for very long, but this is setting up whoever winds up being his vice president to be able to continue that tyranny. And I really do. Bottom line is, I think the Democrat, as much as I have issues with the Republican Party, as much as I'm annoyed with Donald Trump for allowing the COVID narrative to be sold, and for him not coming out yet and talking against the shots, the bottom line is the Democrat Party really is trying to install tyranny in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, the name of it's like a lot like Vietnam. During Vietnam, someone said, "Oh, we have to destroy Vietnam to save it." And that's essentially what Biden's doing, and the Democrats are doing with democracy. They're trying to destroy democracy to save it. And how do they define democracy? They define democracy as one-party Democrat rule. So, in other words, persecuting Trump, jailing Trump, imprisoning Trump, that's all in furtherance of democracy, because just like the communist parties of North Korea and other countries, North Korea is called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So what does that mean? Because whenever the communists, the Soviets, the communist Chinese, and the North Koreans talked about democracy, it meant communism. And that's essentially what right. The Democrats have transformed into as political communists. Here's to hoping that they don't turn into worse and start killing people. But, that.
It might. I mean, Biden's looking a lot like Zelensky right at the moment. Zelensky did this to a number of his political dissidents. A number of them were killed. A number of them were imprisoned. And the bottom line is Zelensky, he happens to not, basically created what would be our martial law and staying in power, even though there should have been a election. He's still there, no election. Up until probably 2 weeks ago, I was like, there's no way. I'd hear, my callers, people calling into my show. I had guests that would say, Biden might actually do martial law and we may not actually have an election. And I was like, that's a bunch of crap. We've been in the middle of war and still had elections. We were in the middle of World War II, and we still
Civil
had
War.
an election. There's no way that it's not going to happen.
When
we had Civil
America
War.
was divided, and we had 11 states that had seceded from the Union. Somehow we managed to have elections in the 22 states that were still remaining with the Union, no problem.
And so I look at it and I go, but I'm actually starting to go, I see a path to Biden staying in office and basically just being a dictator. Now, I think he would love to have the color of an actual election, but if it's not there, I could totally see him figuring out a way, getting us into war. As I mentioned earlier in the show, at least I think I did. I may not have. On the same day that it was announced of this 34 charges that he was convicted of, Biden gave permission to Zelensky to launch United States armament into the middle of Russia.
Yeah, and that's the danger that Russia said might have quote unquote fatal consequences for the West, meaning the U.S. and our NATO allies in Europe.
And that's not coming out on mainstream media. That's only being talked about on shows like this, Gateway Pundit, and other programs along those lines. And really, you have to be paying attention to see these type of things. But MSNBC, NBC is not talking about it. CNN's not talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's only an alternative, conservative media that we hear this. Tucker Carlson, obviously, he was the most powerful voice until he was silenced by the deep staters at Fox News. But he's, thankfully, he's still broadcasting on Twitter. But Trump's talked about this. I just watched a really great program. Colonel Manis has a show. I've been a guest a few times on Patriot TV, in which he had Elbridge Colby, who's kind of one of the two top frontrunners for Trump's national security advisor if he wins re-election. And during the intermissions, he would have segments of Trump's speech warning of World War III over Ukraine. And he talked at great length and with great specificity, passion, and detail about how when he gets elected president, he's going to end that war in 24 hours because he knows that is a clear and present danger, and it's maximizing the threat of Russian nuclear, EMP, or cyber destruction of the U.S. homeland. And this is a threat that Biden's encouraging. Neoconservative Republicans are, they say that we can't self-deter. What does self-deter means? It means that when Russia issues 100 threats of nuclear destruction against the U.S., that we just ignore it and say, screw it. I'm going to throw caution to the wind. I'm going to gamble with the lives of 250 million Americans. And if we get nuked, hey, it was worth it because we got to try to defend Ukraine's, southeast border and decide whether, 5 million Ukrainians remain under Russian control or not.
Let me ask you this question. I talked to a national delegate last night, and he fully intends on voting for Trump no matter what the scenario is. Have you talked to any of you're an alternate, right? You've been elected as an alternate. I was one of those that cast a vote for you.
Thanks.
My question there is, what have you heard? Have you been talking to anybody that's going to be going back to the convention? And have you heard anybody saying, hey, we ought to consider not voting for Trump?
So I think Trump's got a lock in this nomination. He could be broadcasting from prison. Heck, he could be forbidden from speaking from prison. And this is only gonna make. I mean, I just read an article, and I think it was on Real Clear Politics. I think it was by Carl Cannon, one of the founders of Real Clear Politics, and he talked about how this is affecting what he refers to as anti-Trumps. So he's now referring to people like Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, who have expressed solidarity with Trump against Biden's attempt to jail his presidential rival in an autocratic and dictatorial fashion. So I can't imagine that Romney's going to cast a vote for Trump, but I think a lot of the folks that even some of the Trump delegates that are pledged to Trump. But maybe were Nikki Haley supporters or someone like that during the primary process. I just can't see I can't see any effective challenger. The only way that I could see a challenger develop is if Trump himself said, "Look, I'm in jail. I need someone else to save me. Here's the guy I've chosen." That's not going to happen.
Trump's not going to do that. This
is personal for Trump. He views himself as a potential political savior of America. He's patriotic. I mean, this is his life's mission at this point. It's not for power. Most politicians, they run because it's all for power. Maybe at some point Trump may have had feelings like that, but really he's been very issue oriented. He's all about saving America, saving it from World War III, saving it from Biden dictatorship. And so he's not going to do that. So I see zero possibility of him not being the nominee coming out of convention in July of this year.
I hope Putin's listening to him, because I think that may be one of the reasons why Putin hasn't taken any more action against Ukraine and ramped things up even more, turning it into more of a hot type war. I think he may be hoping that Donald Trump will say, "Okay, let's come to the table and let's get this done." All right. I have another thought, though. You happen to know of a vice presidential candidate or a presidential candidate that I think actually this is something that Donald Trump needs to think about. Because one thing that Donald Trump, I think almost everybody that is a listener of mine would agree, is Donald Trump was lousy at picking some of the people in his cabinet and so forth. The attorney general picks of his were horrible. He should have gotten rid of the Joint Chiefs, especially the head of the Joint Chiefs, should have kicked him out on his keister. But you put in Vivek Ramaswamy. That's one smart guy. On top of that, that is an insurance policy right there, because I don't see any way. I mean, if I was Donald Trump, that's number one thing I would do at the Republican convention is I'd say Vivek Ramaswamy. I know there's some other names supposedly that are really good, but the bottom line, I think Vivek is the best one to have him as be a vice president.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say Vivek Ramaswamy or J.D. Vance would be my two top picks. I mean, obviously.
Why J.D.? Why J.D. Vance? I'm going to ask you on that.
So J.D. Vance he's a real up and comer. He's been, a total mega, Trump supporter. He's been one of the leaders in the Senate, probably one of the three top conservatives in the Senate that's been trying to get us out of the war in Ukraine, warning about World War III with Russia. Putting America first. So I think he's very articulate, just like Vivek. Vivek, I think, is more brilliant. I think Vivek has a more developed national security doctrine, of which I'd like to claim I have, some responsibility for. So I definitely, Vivek's my top pick, but J.D. Vance is probably my second, and I think he's a pretty strong second because he's actually very smart as well. I mean, he's genius or near genius. He made a lot of money in his business career, and then he's not. I think he's 39 or something like that, and he's just a real leader on the conservative side in the U.S. Senate, along with Mike Lee and Rand Paul, to try to put America first and shut down the neocons. So I think he'd be very effective. But especially if Trump is in prison, he won't be able to campaign. And so he's going to need someone who really completely encapsulates his political ideology, and someone who's a fighter. If he puts Nikki Haley in there, she'll stab him in the back every time.
Are you kidding? It's a death sentence. I'm sorry. I don't see. I say it with a little bit of a smile on my face, but literally, I think it's a death sentence. He picks Nikki Haley. I don't think he makes it 4 years. I think he's assassinated.
Well, I shudder to even think of that, and I don't want to entertain that, but it's possible you could be correct. We've never seen anything like what we're seeing right now. So we have a president's assassinated, including JFK, who was assassinated by the CIA for wanting peace with Russia. So I've been saying, Trump wants peace with Russia. He campaigned in 2016 of wanting peace with Russia, and if he had been allowed to succeed, Ukraine would never have been invaded by Russia. Outside of Crimea, and 300,000 Ukrainians would still be alive today. So it's Biden that chose to kill them off, essentially. I think one of the reasons that Democrats hate Trump so much and never Trump Republicans hate him so much is because he opposes the deep state. He opposes the globalists. He opposes the America Last Atlanticists, the imperialists that are trying to get us in simultaneous nuclear wars with Russia and China. He just wants to save the country. He wants peace and prosperity. He wants peace through strength. And, he's obviously, from a personal perspective, he's lived a very flawed life, but there's no greater patriot that's running, certainly right now. Obviously, I think Vivek and DeSantis were as great patriots when they were running, but Trump is the only candidate that can save America, and we need to convince independents and recalcitrant Republicans who might be on the left side of the spectrum that that's true. Biden gets reelected. Democracy is over. We have a one-party state. Republicans will never get elected anything at the national level in terms of controlling either House of Congress or the White House, and we'll never be able to get anything accomplished. We won't be able to stop the far left extreme Marxist agenda that Biden's been pushing down our throats ever since he was inaugurated.
Right. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I do think there would be Republican that would get in, but it would be a Mitt Romney. It would be a Nikki Haley, and probably even more liberal than Nikki Haley. Maybe a Dan Crenshaw. Oh my gosh.
Liz Cheney, yeah.
So, folks, I want to say, you're watching this on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We're live on X, Rumble, and YouTube, and you can also go to our website at kmmu.org. I asked David to be here until 6 o'clock. It is now 6:03. Thank you so much for being generous and allowing us to have Michael Letz join us as well in this conversation. I'll say some things to you off air because I want to give you a little information on his background, and another reason why I thought it would be great to have you both on. But I think it was really good to have you as a former attorney, or not a former attorney, but someone that's gone through law school, understands that, also has an MA from Georgetown, and has been a staff officer. I really wanted to have your perspective, along with someone who happens to know a lot of people in the Green Berets and CIA and FBI. Any last thoughts that you're like, hey, John, I really want to get this out before we close out tonight?
No, I just want to thank you for inviting me on your show. I think Mike was great. We agreed on most things, and I think he's a great patriot as well. I don't know a lot about him yet, so because I missed his intro. I'm sure his intro is a lot more impressive than mine. But I think the idea that you did today to have kind of a panel discussion between more than one guest, I think that really enriched things. Sometimes I think maybe I talk too much.
I think you both did great. But I'm like, this is a subject matter that we're at a historical moment in the United States. I listen to the Ben Shapiro show fairly regularly. Why do I listen to him? Not because I agree with him a whole bunch, because I want to hear the message he's given. And one of the things that he is saying is, we're going to be here. Anybody that says that the democracy is going to die one way or the other after 4 years, if we get another 4 years of Biden, guess what? The country is not going to go away. Ben, I disagree with you. They can absolutely undermine it. You're right. There will still be the United States of America, but it will be nothing like that we've ever known.
United Socialist States of America.
Yes, and that's exactly what it'll be. All right, so let's just wrap it up. David Pyne, please tell people how they can find out more about you, especially mention dpyne.substack.com, and that's dpyne.substack.com.
Yeah. Again, I'd like to encourage your viewers to sign up as subscribers. I have both free and paid subscription options. I think the main difference at this point is you want to look at my archive, which has a lot of really great articles, I think, about national security strategy, about solutions. I'm very solutions oriented. There's a lot of national security analysts that understand the issues very well, and are good. Lead good discussions, but they don't have a lot of answers. And I think that's the difference that I bring, is that I bring a lot of real world solutions for how to end the war in Ukraine. That's why Vivek Ramaswamy hired me to serve as his defense and foreign policy advisor, because Trump has talked about how he wants to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, but he didn't really have an exact vision of how to accomplish that. And I passed that vision on to Vivek, and he wrote a great article that I helped write on how to do that. But please go to dpyne.substack.com, subscribe today, and hopefully, and we have a new chat feature as well. So if you're a paid subscriber and you have a question, you want to start a new thread, I will absolutely spend my spare time answering in very detailed answers, whatever your questions may be.
David Pyne, God bless you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you joining us on Main Street Media. I know that not only myself will have you back, but I know that other hosts will have you back as well. So once again, thank you for being here. Good night, everybody. Appreciate you being here. God bless.
Thanks, John.
And we'll see you next week.